The base cafeteria was unusually crowded that afternoon, laughter echoing off the steel walls as soldiers finished their lunch. Among them sat Private Miller, a tall, sharp-tongued recruit with a reputation for thinking too highly of himself. Across the room, Sergeant Elena Torres carried her tray quietly, her posture straight, her face calm but focused. She had been through more than most of the men in that room, yet she never demanded respect. She earned it. As she sat down, Miller's voice cut through the chatter. "Didn't think we were letting the Girl Scouts in uniform now," he sneered, his tone dripping with mockery. The laughter that followed was sharp but fleeting. Some soldiers glanced away, uneasy, knowing Elena's record on the field was unmatched. Elena didn't react immediately. She simply looked up from her tray, her eyes meeting Miller's for a brief, silent moment that made him shift in his seat. "Eat your food, Private," she said evenly, returning her focus to her meal. Her calmness only made him bolder. "Or what?" Miller shot back, smirking. "You'll report me?" "Go ahead, sweetheart. We all know who actually listens to you around here." His voice was loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. The tension in the room tightened like a drawn wire. No one spoke, but everyone knew he had crossed a line. Captain Rhodes, sitting 2 tables away, raised his head slightly, watching the scene unfold. Rhodes respected Torres. She had saved his unit during a live-fire exercise months ago, but he didn't intervene. Not yet. Sometimes silence in the army could be louder than words, and this was one of those moments when truth revealed itself without command. Torres finally stood up, pushing her tray forward, her boots echoing on the tiled floor. "You know, Private," she said softly, "one day your mouth will write a check your rank can't cash." She walked away without another word. The cafeteria buzz returned slowly, but quieter now, uneasy. Miller laughed, forcing confidence, though a few soldiers avoided his gaze. He didn't know that General Warren, commander of the entire base, had been standing just outside the door, speaking with a visiting official when the commotion began. The general had heard everything. He didn't enter right away, though. Instead, he waited, observing the aftermath through the small glass window on the door. Sometimes leadership wasn't about shouting orders. It was about watching who revealed themselves when they thought no one important was watching. Outside, Elena stepped into the sunlight, the cold winter air brushing against her cheeks. Her mind wasn't on Miller. She had faced worse words, worse battles. What bothered her was the silence, how her brothers in arms had let it happen. Respect was something she had earned through sweat and service, yet in moments like these, it felt paper thin. She took a deep breath and kept walking, her boots crunching the gravel toward the training field. Meanwhile, inside, General Warren quietly turned to his aide. "Find out who that was," he said simply, his tone measured but sharp. Within minutes, names and ranks were on his tablet. When he saw Private Miller, he remembered the name, a new transfer with high test scores, but too much attitude. The general's jaw tightened slightly. "Schedule me a call," he said. "I want command to hear this one." Miller, oblivious, strutted out of the cafeteria, bragging to a few fellow recruits about how he'd put that sergeant in her place. Most didn't laugh this time. One even muttered, "Man, you really don't know who you're talking about, do you?" But Miller brushed it off. He didn't realize Elena Torres wasn't just another sergeant. She was a decorated combat veteran with 2 tours and a Medal of Valor. Back in her quarters, Elena sat quietly cleaning her boots, a ritual that kept her calm. Her roommate, Corporal Lane, entered, clearly upset. "You should report him," Lane said. "What he said, that's not okay." Eleanor looked up, her voice steady. "I know, but people like him always hang themselves. You just have to let them talk long enough." At that moment, the base intercom crackled to life. "Private Miller, report to General Warren's office immediately." The chatter across the base froze. It wasn't common for a general to call a private directly, and when it happened, it was never good. Miller felt the blood drain from his face. "What for?" He whispered to no one in particular, but deep down, he already knew. As he made his way through the long corridor toward the general's office, his earlier swagger evaporated. Every step echoed louder than the last. The soldiers he passed gave him curious looks, a few shaking their heads. The silence pressed in around him, the weight of discipline finally catching up to arrogance. He straightened his uniform, trying to mask the fear rising in his chest. Outside the general's office, the aide opened the door. "Private Miller, sir." General Warren didn't look up from his desk. "Close the door." The click of it shutting behind Miller sounded like a verdict. The room was bright, spotless, the kind of place where truth had no shadows to hide in. Warren finally raised. General Warren didn't speak for a few seconds, letting the silence weigh down the young private. Miller's pulse thudded in his ears. He had rehearsed excuses in his head on the way. It was just a joke. She overreacted. Everyone laughed. But under the general's calm stare, the words dried up. "Private Miller," Warren finally said, his tone low and controlled. "Do you know who Sergeant Torres is?" Miller hesitated. "Sir, she's just a sergeant, sir." The general's brow lifted slightly. "Just a sergeant?" He tapped the desk once with a pen. "She's the only reason 3 of our soldiers are alive today. She's seen more combat than most officers I know. And you thought mocking her made you look strong." Miller felt a flush creep up his neck. "Sir, I didn't mean—" Warren cut him off sharply. "You meant every word, and now you'll mean every consequence." The general stood, his height imposing but not exaggerated. His presence alone commanded respect. "You think a soldier's worth is measured in words, Private, or in their gender?" His voice grew colder, quieter. "You insulted someone who's bled for this uniform while you were still figuring out which way your boots face." Miller stood stiff, trying to keep his composure, but his throat tightened. "I'm sorry, sir." Warren studied him for a long moment before responding. "You will be," he said, "because I'm about to make a call you'll remember for the rest of your career, if you still have one." He turned toward the phone on his desk, the polished black surface reflecting the light overhead. Miller stood frozen as the general picked up the receiver. "This is Warren," he said into the line. "Put me through to Command Oversight." "Yes, I'll hold." The calm efficiency of his voice made the moment even more unnerving. Outside, the corridor was quiet except for the hum of distant activity. Soldiers passed by, exchanging whispers, sensing something significant was happening behind the closed door. Inside, Miller stared at the floor, his hands trembling at his sides. The general's call connected, and he spoke clearly, outlining the incident with precise detail. No embellishment, no drama, just the facts. His tone carried authority, and when he ended the call with, "That will be addressed immediately," Miller knew his fate was no longer in his own hands, at his eyes, and Miller swallowed hard, realizing that his worst moment had just reached the highest ears on the base. After hanging up, Warren finally looked at him again. "You're on temporary suspension until further notice. You'll report for disciplinary review in the morning. Dismissed." Miller hesitated, unsure whether to salute or apologize again, but the general's cold gaze left no space for either. He turned and walked out, his boots heavy on the polished floor. Outside, whispers followed him like shadows. "He got called in by the general," one soldier murmured. "That's not a talk, that's a storm." Eleanor was at the training field when she saw Miller walking back toward the barracks, his head low, steps slow. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply nodded once, almost imperceptibly. To her it wasn't victory, it was accountability. The respect she'd earned didn't need defending with words. The silence around Miller was enough. Every soldier now knew exactly what the general had done, and why.